Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be making that long-awaited video, the Santa Cruz Vala versus the Santa Cruz Bullit. So before we get into the video at all, I wanted to point out a couple things that I think could have hindered my performance on the Santa Cruz Bullit. So with that bike, when I first demoed it, the guys at Santa Cruz were super duper cool, but I think that they had a shock pump that was not, I think the gauge might have been off because the fork and the shock were 30 PSI off, and I wasn't able to notice that until later in the ride. And so that definitely hindered my performance. But another thing that also definitely hindered my performance was the bar width. These bikes come with very wide bars. They're cut to 800 millimeters wide, which some people like. But for me, my sweet spot is between 770 and 750 millimeters. So them being at that width really threw me off. And so that was something to take into account. On the Santa Cruz Vala, I ended up using my setup. So it had my bars cut at 770 millimeters wide with my 42.5 millimeter stem. It also had my own grip, so the bike felt pretty at home for me with the cockpit. A cockpit is one of those things that can make or break a ride. So having my own cockpit on the Vala really enhanced my experience on that bike. But I'll try my hardest to kind of set aside that I ran my own cockpit on the Vala and ran the stock setup on the Bullit, just to really help narrow down what I thought of these two bikes and how they kind of compare. But with that out of the way, let's get straight into the comparison. I think the first thing I'll cover is the playfulness of the bike. This is one of the most important things for me coming to an e-bike. I've been on so many e-bikes in the past and they've been really stuck to the ground, and with my riding style that changed, I really like to put the bike where I want it. And a lot of bikes that I've ridden in the past didn't work very well with that. The Santa Cruz Bullit was better, I would say, than the previous gen Bullit. I had the previous gen Bullit, which had the VPP suspension. They changed it to a 4-bar, and they're also using the new X2, which I think is probably helping with the rear end maneuverability. So the way that the Bullit and the Santa Cruz Vala both compare is that they both use the 4-bar horse link suspension design. As most of you guys know, Santa Cruz is known for their VPP suspension platform, but in their newer e-bikes, they've been veering off from that and using a 4-bar system. The 4-bar system seems to be a lot more playful, and I noticed this instantly with the newest Bullit. I had the previous gen Bullit, which had the VPP suspension, and I found that this new design seemed to be a lot more active and a lot more playful in the rear. But comparing it to the Vala puts the Bullit in the dust when it comes to playfulness and maneuverability. I found that the Vala maneuvered really, really well, and I was able to put the bike where I wanted it. And initially I thought that the suspension might have been set up wrong, but I was quickly proven wrong when I went down the first trail and I noticed that the bike handled super duper well. I found that it had good small bump sensitivity off the top, and it was very, 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 very playful. So that was something that was honestly mind-blowing for me. I've never really ridden an e-bike that was able to move around as much as the Vala did. But comparing it to the Bullit, once again, the Bullit was definitely an improvement, but I found that the Bullit was still a bit hard to move around, and it really was kind of vague and dead compared to the Vala. But obviously, these two bikes are totally different bikes. The Bullit is going to be your like downhill or enduro e-bike, and the Vala is going to be your all-mountain / trail e-bike. So they're going to have totally different traits because of their geometry and the way that their suspension kinematics are set up. Talking about the suspension design, these two bikes are going to be pretty different. The Santa Cruz Bullit uses the Fox X2, which is going to be your more like coil-like feel shock, and so it's also paired with the suspension kinematics in the Bullit, which seems to give you a linear. Well, it seems pretty progressive, but I found that it was a little bit more linear and less progressive than the Vala was, which would make sense because it is a more downhill oriented bike. I found that it just wasn't as playful. And the Vala was a lot more progressive, and I think that probably was part of why the bike was so playful in the first place. I find that the Bullit doesn't have as good small bump sensitivity. I found that the Santa Cruz Vala had quite a bit better small bump sensitivity than the Santa Cruz Bullit did. But this is for a good reason, and so I'll kind of touch on that right now. So the Santa Cruz Vala is going to be, again, your trail / all mountain bike. So it's really going to focus on giving you that really supple off the top feel, while also trying to give you some support, mid-stroke support in the rear end. Bullit, on the other hand, is meant to be pushed really, really hard. As I said earlier, the Bullit is that downhill-oriented bike where you're basically going to be pushing the limits. And so, as most enduro bikes go, you're sacrificing some of that off-the-top small bump sensitivity feel for that that mega support in the mid-stroke to really be able to push the bike. So basically, the harder you push the Bullit, the better it's going to feel, and I definitely felt that. And the Vala, on the other hand, had really good small bump sensitivity with pretty good mid-stroke support. But when it came to pushing the bike, I noticed it got overwhelmed quite quickly, depending on the terrain that you were riding. So for me, I was riding a lot of like flatter turn, like smoother trails, but I did take it on this downhill track where it's got a lot of varying terrain, where it's like rough, got turns, it's steep in some sections, and so it's a good variety, and it's just a really well-rounded trail to do tests on. Well, I found that the Vala did quite well, and I was actually impressed with how well it did considering the geometry numbers and the way that the bike was set up. But I did find that the Vala did get overwhelmed when it came to those really steep sections where you're really braking and really getting deep into that suspension. And I think that's kind of where the Vala starts to have some downsides. The Santa Cruz Bullit has like this bottomless feel, and it can be pushed really hard. It's got 170 millimeters in the rear, and it's got 170 in the front. But the way that the suspension is set up in the rear, it gives you a lot of support, and it really allows you to push that bike really, really hard. Versus the Vala has good support, but it does blow through the travel when you start to really push the bike and put it in predicaments where it might not be designed to be put in. But I found that the Vala was just a well-rounded bike, and it handled a lot of situations really, really good. Which brings me into how the two bikes cornered. And I found that the Bullit with the longer chainstay cornered pretty well, but I think that, again, those bars were throwing me off, and the way that the suspension setup was also throwing me off. I was tending to be way off the rear, and I think that's because I was nervous. The way that the bike was set up made me nervous. And so I found that the Bullit cornered okay, but I think if I got the cockpit set up where I wanted it, I think that the bike could have handled really, really well in those flat corners, or just corners in general. Then when it comes to the Vala, again, I had the suspension was set up properly, and the bars were set up to my liking. I found that it flat cornered really well, and I also found that it just cornered really well in general. I was really centered on the bike. I felt really comfortable in the position that I was set in, and it was just very confidence inspiring. But again, I think a lot of it is how the suspension was set up, plus having a cockpit that I was very used to. I think that the Bullit, it probably corners very well, considering it has a longer chainstay, and as you can see my Dreadnought back here, this thing corners very, very well, and it's got a long chainstay, similar length to the Bullit. And I think that the Bullit probably would be a better cornerer, but for me, I was more comfortable in the Vala. I don't want to say which one I thought was better, because I think that the Bullit probably would have been better if I was able to have the suspension set up correctly while also having the bars set up correctly. So I'll just kind of give it as a tie here, even though I did feel more comfortable on the Vala when it came to flat corners and just corners in general. And I also wanted to touch on climbing. I don't really need to say that much, because I'm sure most of you guys know who's going to take the cake on that one. The Vala was a better climber, I think. Not by a lot. I think that since they're e-bikes, they don't make a huge difference. So I don't think geometry makes a huge difference. But for me, what made the Vala a better climber was that it was a little bit more of an upright position, which just gave you a more comfortable position while climbing. So again, that's like a small margin. I think that the Bullit might be a better technical climber since it has a longer chainstay. but I'm also not 100% sure. Something else that I did want to mention real quick is that the bikes had the exact same specs. So Fox factory suspension, EXO transmission drivetrain, same brakes, same everything. Obviously the suspension was a 38 in the front on the Bullit, and it was also 38 on the front on the Vala. The only difference was that it had a Fox factory Float X on the rear of the Vala and a Fox factory X2 on the Bullit. So very similar builds. So I'm not even going to get into the builds of the two bikes. I'm solely talking about the frame in general and how the bike handles. But it was nice that they both had the same build spec, because that also narrows some stuff down. Okay, so lastly, what bike is good for you? This is going to be up to you guys for decision, but I'm going to give you guys a bit of insight on, you know, what bike might be best for you guys. So the Bullit is going to be for that person that wants to push the limits and really go as fast as you can down some of the gnarliest terrain. I found that that bike was very confidence inspiring when doing gnarlier trails, and it also handled the big hits with ease, essentially. And so if you're somebody that is wanting something to give you a lot of confidence in some of the gnarlier terrain, if it's at the edge of your abilities, or you just want to take your gnarlier trails to the next level by riding them as fast as you can, I think that the Bullit is a better bike for you. And then if you're somebody that wants to have fun on tamer terrain, or wants to make gnarlier terrain more fun, and really wants to place the bike where you want it, and just jibbing around, if you're into jumping, where it doesn't involve you hitting like flat landings and doing some gnarly hucks, I think that the Vala is a very good option. I personally, out of the two, I had way more fun on the Vala, and I think it was partially the way that the bike was set up, but also the way where I'm at in my skill is I want to just take funky lines. I want to really put the bike where I want it. I want to be drifting around, you know, steer at the rear in some instances. And I found that the Vala offered way more fun than the Bullit did. But not everyone is me, and a lot of people's riding style is just they want to just ride the bike and let the bike do a lot of work, or again, they might be somebody that wants to push as fast as they can. Don't get me wrong, I really like to push as fast as I can. I'm an inspiring pro enduro racer trying to get to another level, and so I do like to go fast, but I find that a more playful e-bike is allowing me to open my mind up and hit different lines on the trail. So, but enough about me. I think that's probably enough information for you guys to decide on which bike is for you, and I think I covered as much as I can think of at the moment. If I did forget anything, please leave a comment down below, and I will definitely be sure to reply to that if you guys have any questions involving either of these bikes. Yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Hopefully you guys found it helpful and useful. Hopefully that was able to help you decide which bike you wanted. And if you guys would like to support me further, check me out on Patreon. I'll leave a link down in the description below. It gives you a bunch of sweet perks. You talk to me directly. You can also get access to videos weeks early, and it just really supports the channel out. So I'd really appreciate it if you guys go check out my Patreon down below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.